Let's get started with today's story. I still remember the day we boarded the plane to Bora Bora, the excitement bubbling in my chest. It was our honeymoon, the start of what I believed would be a lifelong adventure. Helen, my wife, was radiant, her smile lighting up the cabin as we settled into our seats. Little did I know, that trip would change everything. We arrived at the resort, a paradise straight out of a postcard. The water was crystal clear, the bungalows luxurious, and the staff greeted us with warm smiles. Helen seemed thrilled, snapping pictures and holding my hand as we explored. I was blissfully unaware of the storm brewing beneath the surface. The first few days were perfect. We swam, snorkeled, and sipped cocktails by the beach. Every night we dined under the stars, talking about our future. But then, something shifted. It was on the fourth night that I first noticed Helen acting differently. After dinner, she suggested we join a group at the resort's bar. "Let's go, Justin," she said, her eyes sparkling with a mix of excitement and mischief. "It'll be fun." I wasn't too keen on the idea. "Helen, it's our honeymoon. Why not just enjoy a quiet night together?" She pouted. "Come on, it's just one night. We've been together all day and I just want to meet some new people." Reluctantly, I agreed. The bar was lively, filled with other couples and travelers. Helen seemed to be in her element, laughing and chatting with strangers. I, on the other hand, felt like a fish out of water. That's when I noticed him. Dave. He was tall, with sun-kissed skin and an easy smile. He caught Helen's attention almost immediately. They struck up a conversation and I found myself sitting on the sidelines, nursing my drink. After a while, I decided to call it a night. "Helen, I'm heading back to the room. You coming?" She hesitated. "You go ahead. I'll be right behind you." I frowned but didn't push. "All right. Don't stay too long." As I walked back to our bungalow, an uneasy feeling settled in my stomach. I tried to shake it off, convincing myself I was overthinking. But deep down, I knew something was off. The next morning, Helen was unusually quiet. She sat across from me at breakfast, pushing her food around her plate, barely eating. When I asked if everything was all right, she brushed it off. "Just a bit tired," she said, avoiding my gaze, her eyes fixed on the table. "Tired?" I asked, trying to catch her eye. "You went to bed early last night." "Yeah, I guess the heat is just getting to me," she mumbled, still not looking at me. She sipped her coffee, her hands trembling slightly, but I pretended not to notice. I wanted to believe her, to chalk it up to the long days in the sun, but something about her demeanor felt off. Her usual warmth was replaced with a distant coolness that I couldn't ignore. That night, Helen suggested we head to the bar again. This time I refused. "Helen, why are you so keen on spending time there? It's our honeymoon." She shrugged. "It's just fun. You don't have to come if you don't want to." Her casual attitude made my chest tighten. "It's not that I don't want to, Helen. I just feel like you care more about going to the bar than spending time with me." She finally turned to face me, looking frustrated and a bit distant, something I couldn't quite understand. "Justin, I enjoy being there. It's fun and it helps me unwind a bit. If you don't want to come, fine, but I'm going." I watched her walk away, grabbing her purse without waiting for my response. The uneasy feeling I had been pushing down all day boiled over. Something didn't feel right. Helen never usually wanted to be around strangers more than me, especially on our honeymoon. I decided to follow her without her knowing. After a few minutes, I slipped out of the bungalow and headed toward the bar. The path was dimly lit, and as I got closer, the sound of laughter and music grew louder. My heart was pounding, each step making me more anxious. When I reached the bar, I stayed in the shadows, looking around the crowd. It didn't take long to spot them. Helen and Dave sitting close together at a small table in the corner. Their heads were close, deep in conversation. Helen's face lit up as she spoke, smiling in a way I hadn't seen all day. I felt my chest tighten. It wasn't just how close they were sitting. It was the way they looked at each other. Dave leaned in, looking relaxed and at ease, like they shared some private joke. Helen's eyes sparkled in the dim light and she laughed softly, the kind of laugh that used to be just for me. I stayed there for a while, watching them. My heart was pounding, and I was bracing myself for something worse. But thankfully nothing happened beyond the talking and laughing. They stayed at the table, just enjoying each other's company. No touches, no whispers beyond what I could see. Still, it hurt. Helen seemed so happy, so comfortable with him. Eventually, they both stood up and Helen made her way back to the bungalow alone. I stayed behind, taking a few moments to gather my thoughts. I needed to act normal, not let her suspect I had followed her. After about 15 minutes, I headed back. When I walked into the bungalow, Helen was already in bed scrolling through her phone. She glanced up as I entered. "Where were you?" she asked, her tone casual. "I went to the restaurant to grab a quick bite," I said, keeping my voice steady and light. She nodded, not pressing further, and I let the conversation end there, though my mind was filled with questions and doubts. The next morning, I couldn't hold it in any longer. After breakfast, I finally asked her, "Helen, what's going on? Why have you been spending so much time with Dave?" She froze, her face turning pale. "Justin, it's nothing," she said quickly, too quickly. "He's just a friend." "Just a friend?" I shot back, unable to keep the frustration out of my voice. "You've been spending more time with him than with me." Her eyes darted away and she crossed her arms. "You're imagining things," she said, her tone defensive. "I love you, Justin. I married you." Her words felt hollow, and I couldn't shake the feeling there was more she wasn't telling me. I wanted to believe her, but doubt had already taken root. That night, I couldn't sleep. Helen lay beside me, her back turned, and I felt like a stranger in my own marriage. The final straw came 2 nights later. Helen had gone to the bar again, and I decided to follow her once more. This time I saw them slipping away, heading toward the beach. I followed at a distance, my heart pounding in my chest. They walked along the shore, the moonlight reflecting off the water, casting shadows on their faces. I stayed hidden, watching them closely. They seemed completely at ease with each other, laughing and talking like old friends. But what unsettled me was how close they were, their arms brushing together as they walked, as if they were a couple, not just 2 people passing the time. Then, without warning, they stopped. Dave turned to her, his hand reaching up to touch her face. Helen didn't pull away. They stood there for a moment, her eyes meeting his with something I couldn't quite understand, something I didn't want to understand. And then, to my shock, they kissed. It wasn't a quick, innocent peck. It was deep, lingering, everything a kiss between a husband and wife should be. I stood frozen, my stomach in knots. I couldn't believe it. My wife, my new wife, was kissing another man. I felt like the ground had been ripped from beneath me, my mind racing, my heart in pieces. After the kiss, they slowly broke apart and walked back toward the path leading off the beach. I couldn't move. I couldn't think. I just knew I had to keep following them. I needed to see where this would go. They continued until they reached Dave's bungalow. I quickly pulled out my phone and started recording. I filmed them as they hugged, his arms wrapped around her, then kissed one more time before they entered the bungalow. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. My wife, the woman I had married just days ago, was cheating on me. And it was happening right under my nose, on our honeymoon no less. I stood there for a few more seconds, my thoughts a whirlwind, before finally turning away. I walked back to my bungalow, each step heavier than the last. I didn't know what I was feeling anymore. Anger, betrayal, disbelief. It didn't matter. Once inside, I sat down at the desk and stared at the phone screen. I needed to think, to figure out what to do next. The idea of confronting her now seemed pointless. She had already shown me who she really was. I booked a return flight for myself for the next morning. It wasn't easy, but I knew I couldn't stay here, not with everything that had happened. Then I canceled Helen's return ticket. She wouldn't be going home with me, not anymore. Finally, I logged into our joint account. It had always been a shared account, but now it was mine. I transferred every penny into my personal account, making sure she couldn't access it. I leaned back in the chair, staring at the ceiling. There was nothing left to say, nothing left to do. My marriage was over before it even truly began. The woman I thought I knew had just destroyed everything. About 2 hours later, she came back to the bungalow. I stayed in bed, acting like everything was normal, though my heart was still racing from everything that had happened. She walked in, her footsteps light but hurried, clearly not expecting to find me awake. "Hey," she said, a little surprised. I gave her a neutral nod. How was your night? I asked, trying to sound casual, though it was hard to hide the bitterness creeping into my voice. Did you have fun? Yeah, she replied quickly, almost too quickly. It was fine. I met a few other couples from Canada. We just talked and hung out for a bit. I nodded, watching as she dropped her purse onto the dresser and started undressing to head for the shower. She didn't make eye contact, and I knew she was avoiding any real conversation. I'm tired, she said, turning toward the bathroom. I'm going to take a shower and then head to bed. I stayed where I was, still pretending to be unfazed, even though every part of me wanted to explode. She was acting as if nothing had happened, and I couldn't decide if that made me more angry or more defeated. She didn't even look back as she disappeared into the bathroom, and all I could do was lie there in the silence, waiting for the inevitable confrontation, or maybe the inevitable end. The next morning, she headed to the pool, as if nothing had happened. I stayed behind in the bungalow, quietly packing my things. I didn't say a word to her. Once done, I handed in the key at reception and left the hotel. I grabbed a taxi to the airport, my heart heavy but resolute. The flight back was quiet, a strange calm settling over me. When I got home, it was late and I barely had time to sit down before my phone started ringing off the hook. Missed calls, texts, each one from Helen. I ignored the first few, but then she called again. I reluctantly picked up. Where are you? Her voice was panicked, as if she'd just realized something was wrong. Home, I said flatly. There was a pause on the other end before she spoke again. What do you mean, home? Why did you leave? I didn't answer right away. My mind was racing and the anger that had been simmering inside me finally boiled over. You really don't know why? You've made your choice, Helen. What are you talking about? You're just going to leave me like this? After everything? After everything? I scoffed, my voice rising. You've been with another man, Helen, on our honeymoon. I saw it all. Her breath caught on the other end of the line. You've been lying to me. I cut her off, my tone hardening. I'm done. There's nothing left to say. Oh, and by the way, I canceled your return flight ticket. You're on your own now. I didn't wait for her to respond. I closed the phone immediately, not caring about her answer. My chest was tight, and though I was relieved to have confronted her, it still didn't feel real. The life I thought I had, the woman I thought I knew, everything was gone. Later, I received a text from Helen. She said she'd be home tomorrow and wanted to talk. I didn't even bother responding. The thought of her coming back to my house after everything she'd done made my blood boil. I had no intention of letting her back in. So I grabbed my tools and changed the locks, making sure she couldn't get inside. Then I packed up her things, the clothes, the toiletries, everything, and moved them out to the front yard. I didn't care if it seemed harsh. She had broken everything, and this was my way of closing that door for good. The next day she arrived at the house. I watched through the window as she pulled up and froze when she saw her belongings scattered outside. She stood there stunned for a moment before walking up to the door and trying to unlock it. When she realized the lock had been changed, panic set in. She knocked hard, shouting for me to open up. After a few minutes, I walked over and opened the door slowly. She stood there, eyes wide with disbelief. "Let me in, Justin," she demanded, her voice shaking. "No," I said coldly. "I don't want you in my life anymore. And take your stuff from my yard or I'll throw everything in the trash. They take up space." She stepped back, her face red with frustration. "You can't just do this. You can't throw me out like this. We need to talk." I shook my head. "There's nothing left to talk about. It's over." She opened her mouth to argue, but I didn't want to hear it anymore. Without another word, I closed the door in her face, the finality of the action hanging heavy in the air. After that, I didn't waste any more time. I filed for divorce and made sure everything was in motion. I wasn't going to let her walk away from this without consequences. But I wasn't done yet. I sent the video, the one of her kissing Dave and walking into his bungalow, to her parents and close friends. They deserved to know what she'd done, what kind of person she really was. No more pretending, no more lies. The calls and messages started flooding in, but I ignored them all. There was no going back. That was the end of it. I had nothing left to say. The woman I thought I knew, the life I thought we had built, was all gone. And with that I could finally start to move on, ready to face whatever the future held. Thank you for watching.